poetry, spoken word, how that came to be. But yeah, I was writing regular poems, but I never really thought to write a rhyme.
Right.
You know, and so that's the first time I wrote a rhyme, and I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of good. So let me just I mean, that was my thought. I mean, I wrote it with my best friend at the time, and her rhyme wasn't that good. And so in comparing the two, I was like, okay, I think I can do it.
Did you have like encouragement from family? Like, was it
my mom encouraged me in a roundabout way in that I was the only child. Well, I was raised as the only child. I had a brother, but he was raised with someone else. And my mother gave me freedom. Like, I had my own room. I had privacy, which I think the best gift you can give a child, if you can do it. Especially if your child kind of shows some sort of artistic ambition.
Mm-hmm.
But so she just gave me my privacy, so I was able just to go buck wild in the room and dance and kind of work out, I guess in hindsight, my craft without interruption, unless it was an emergency or I had to eat or something. You know. So in that way, yes, she was very supportive.
Did you have nicknames when you were a kid, or did people
Yep.
know you as Hanifah?
Yep. No one called. I hated my name Hanifah because all the teachers couldn't pronounce it.
Yep,
You know,
that's
it
me.
just was annoying. But no, I had all of the corny, 80s name. It was Baby One. Some
Do you
corny.
remember when emails were like that? Like, you had to have your email address, like baby101@AOL.com. Like,
Yeah.
Oh,
What were the other names?
The Nene Key, because the people used to call me Nee or Nene or whatever, and I was like, that's long. And then that became Shocky, which actually was my MC name when I was signed.
Sweet.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's fun. It was fun. Wow, no complaints. I had fun in the 80s and the 90s.
Like, as you got older, like who were you able to, like, I don't know, like relate to more, like lyrically? Who was, like, Lauryn Hill?
I mean, of course, Lauren, but way before Lauren. I mean, I'm actually I'm the kind of person that listens to melody and the texture of someone's voice. That's what initially grabs me. If they have the lyrics, then all the better. But I don't necessarily need that to like you. So a lot of the
Wait, repeat that. It has to be.
The first thing that grabs me when I hear an MC or a singer or whatever is the texture of their voice, the approach to their lyric. Not necessarily the lyric itself, but how they lean on the beat. I always say how you lean on the beat.
Write that down. Lean on the beat. Right?
You know?
Lean on the beat. Like, oh.
But so a lot of the obviously Rakim, but he has all of it covered. He has the lyrics. He has the texture in his voice is just heavenly. He really understands the craft. But then I would like someone like I'm not sure you might be aware of this person, but Just Ice. And I love Just Ice.
I don't even know Just Ice.
You know, I had an argument in another life. I used to write for a few hip hop mags in the 90s, and I interviewed the Far Side, and we had the biggest argument over who was the hardest MC to ever live. And they were coming from
Drop some names, like who?
Well, they were claiming that Ice Cube was the hardest, and I laughed. I laughed, but they were adamant. They're like, Ice Cube. I was like, he poses to be hard, and that's his image, and he comes at you hard. But if you want to talk about actual, like a physical, like hard voice, I was coming. That just naturally came from the voice. I was like, Just Ice has it hands down. I just loved it. It was like almost like a. If there was an equivalent to like a heavy metal hip hop, like a real fusion, but his producer at the time was Mantronix, and Mantronix, even before Hank Shockley and Public Enemy, he really had that chaotic approach to production. It wasn't tap 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 tap.
Right.
It was everything was coming at you, and it just had they together. There's an album that came out in 1984 that is probably hands down one of my favorite hip hop albums ever. The rare albums that every single track is amazing, But yeah, I love lyrics, but I'm really a voice person, and the way you approach the beat, that's what captures me, And then at some point down the road, I'll listen to your lyrics. Like, oh wow, okay.
You know what's funny?
Excuse me.
I went to. I hear that in your voice, that it's about the voice.
Mm-hmm.
When you speak, and I went to see Carl Hancock Rucks at
Oh yeah. Oh, at the green space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and he was the first person to speak, and I've never seen him live. I've never met him.
Mm-hmm.
And he got on the mic. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, he has an amazing voice as well. Yeah. He has an amazing voice.
I'm like, he's such a little thing.
Yeah.
It's like big, Woo. Big, low, luscious, round voice.
Yeah. He has a great voice.
Oh my god.
Some people have great voices, just don't know what to, to really do with it. But you're like, God, you have that beautiful voice.
Thank you. No applause. People used to tell me in my grad classes at Michigan, class would end and somebody would come up to me and say, I just loved your voice whenever you talked in the semester. Thank you.
Hey, yeah. What year are you guys in, generally speaking?
Well, I'm a junior.
You're a junior?
This is my senior year. The spring
Senior.
semester is going to be my last semester.
Right, I know you're like ready to go. Junior as well? Senior, okay. Is everyone like basically like juniors,
There's a
senior,
mix.
upper class?
We don't have any fresh.
Yeah, no.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're all juniors, sophomores, seniors.
Great.
Let's see here. And you don't should be prepared for journalism. You just conducted an interview.
I know, first one out the box.
I'm going to do Complex Magazine. I would love to do that.
So what kind of journalism are you interested in? Music journalism or?
Okay, so this is the thing.
If that exists- if
The
that
press is
exists
like
anymore.
going for it. So initially, I was just gonna stop and like with my undergrad and get in journalism, and just continue. I want to do Black pop culture in grad school, but now because I don't feel like I have a stable foundation, I might have to continue to do journalism. But then after seeing the professor, I was like, okay, I can just do Black pop culture and just work on my craft as a journalist.
Yeah.
Hanifah, which track? Going way back, Cole getting up.
Oh, you can bring up Just Ice? Okay, he had to get, Cole Getting Dumb is just like a classic, yeah. Yeah, that's oh my God.
What I love about the early this period.
Yeah.
Everything is lined up perfect.
I know, I know exactly, yeah.
Listen, I had Reebok, patent leather, high tops. This is it. Don't tell me nothing. Yeah, I wish I was like a teenager.
I feel crazy over this song.
The parties must have been the best.
It's interesting because Mantronic, I mean, he's definitely heard as one of the better producers throughout the history. But he came out in the 90s. I know nobody talks about it. But he kind of transferred the house. There's a lot more like electronic house music now. But he came out. That's a little Puerto Rican name right there.
Nobody does. That would be good for me to write. Nobody does history about the people who left.
They didn't necessarily come out hip hop, but they had this lead, and actually, it was really good. It's like, yeah.
We used to tag each other.
What's interesting is that this is the actual album cover. This is 1984, and they consider this going back to the school. Going back to a certain aesthetic. Yeah.
Little tokens and everything with the little
Yeah.
Oh, the token.
Yeah. And the slips, the orange slips you had to get a bus driver.
All right, so New Yorkers, for the most part. Born and raised?
Yep.
Born and raised? All right.
Can you see it?
And then he's.
It's a double Dutch.
Oh, yeah.
Philly.
Yeah. Then you'll be. I was so bad at double dutch. I've only double dutch for once in my life. It was like a freak moment. I'm like, oh my god, I'm doing it. I was an awkward kid, so even straight rope, like the rope would hit my head. I didn't have my coordination on me.
That was me.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta leave the ropes.
Yeah. I'm just happy that one time I said, okay, I can say I've actually, I had a moment.
Right?
Yep. For how many of you, if you own an iPhone, I guess also a smartphone, that the picture you put on your wall is like artwork? Like, oh, I have this. You have a new picture, and I'm like, oh, I love it.
You're so gorgeous, girl.
Excuse me, but I mean like the color, with the black. Good afternoon, great ones. I see a few people are straggling in, but I'm gonna open the cipher. If I can find my little reminder. So we begin again. I'm opening the cipher. This is your time to demonstrate your greatness, your professorship. Newly minted professors. You are already great, and there's nothing you need to do to prove that to me if you don't see it in yourself. You were born with everything you need to be great. A life, a culture, a language, consciousness, the ability to communicate powerfully to produce the results you desire. Even your complaints are great. They reveal what matters and what you care about. Dare to be different. Surprise yourself. This is your course. Be the consumer of your own productivity. And don't wait till the last minute. Most last minutes are canceled or used up by other things. The only way out is in. Last call. The honor of your presence is requested. Like that?
Yes.
I see over there. I'm recording a little bit of this, so because the interview, I'm probably going to use some of this for my job talk.
Okay.
Some of the stuff about
Yep.
female MCs. So we have a wonderful guest and friend of mine, Hanifah Walidah, who's going to be with us during the period. And you are about to meet an incredible group of people who we distinguished yesterday. So we open every class with just an open, free-for-all cipher.
Okay.
Usually trying to recreate a little bit of what happened for those people who were missing from the last class, and to just vibe off of whatever they studied overnight. So just for me, let me check in. So you read my essay? Did you get through it all? Was it long to read?
I skimmed.
That's okay. Did you get through it all? Okay, thank you. It's a long piece. It's not a usual thing. It's interesting. I'm going to give a lecture to 160 people, right? And they're reading like dozens of those kinds of length essays. And I'm like, they ain't reading those. Let's be real. 160 people? If Melania's in there, she's reading it. But no, most of them will, and to be honest, digesting all of that in one swoop is really difficult. It doesn't really make sense. We live in a culture that's overwhelming us with information, not to mention the information that comes from your technology. So somehow the irony of it is that professors are struggling to keep up with their own syllabus. So I don't do that. I don't play that game. I don't want to go to the hospital like some of my mentors have gone out of exhaustion of trying to do everything. I want to be able to do my writing and teach. I want to have a balanced life. And I think that's something we should all promote to other emerging adults. How many of you got to the Merton's roles, the 5 types, adaptations? You saw it. So I'm going to try and put it into action for us. Okay. this is, where do we meet? We meet in, we
At
met in
the-
LA,
at the-
in
no, no,
Atlanta.
Atlanta, at
Yeah.
the arts. I
The
forgot what
National
they call
Black
the
Arts Festival with
yeah.
Tony, so that's the little cipher connection.
Yeah.
In fact, it was in a cipher that I met her.
Yeah.
That was my first cipher.
The one that was on stage, that was
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
With Medusa as well.
Yeah, and Deion Ferris.
Mhm.
There were a group of people who were artists in various realms. I'm an artist behind, like I don't perform very much, but I am an artist. But that's not how people primarily know me. They know me as Professor Gaunt. And then there was an artist you're going to hear named Medusa from Oakland, who
LA.
is an
She's from LA.
Is she from LA?
Mhm.
And who is, this is the thing I always love about being a music aficionado. I could always say, I love, Hanifah's my favorite. No, Medusa's my favorite. No. So when people ask me what my favorite is, I'm always betraying the lie is, I have a lot of favorites depending on the moment, So Medusa and Hanifah, I was mesmerized by the two of you at that event.
That was actually really beautiful. Well, maybe jump from because we had kind of organically started this cipher on stage as a performance.
It's all women.
Yeah, it was all women initially. It was all
That's
women.
right.
It was all women initially, and as everyone got their chance to shine, something organically started happening where the people who were on the periphery started to kind of support, whether it was vocally, nothing to kind of interject on someone's rhyme, but it was or even physically support that person's rhyme. So we kind of became like this moving organism on stage where it really wasn't clear who was on first and who was on second. It just was a performance, but not so much, this person's turn now, we shut up, And we kind of realized that, or rather we didn't really realize we were doing that until two young gentlemen decided to get in on the cipher. And we kind of created a circle or a semicircle, but when they came in, they turned their backs towards us, and their attention went towards the audience. And even the audience, I don't know if you noticed, was like, whoa, what just happened? The energy completely shifted. Like the audience felt like they were a part of it. Everyone was trying to create something together. We didn't go on stage feeling like we wanted to do this. It just kind of organically happened. Now we can say that maybe that's because they were just women on stage. Who knows? But when these two gentlemen came on stage, the energy completely shifted because they went into that kind of typical hip hop stance. Okay, I'm gonna do my thing and blah blah blah, and the hell with everybody else. Fine, and that for me was really eye opening because I it's not like I haven't thought of that before, but to actually be amidst something like that actually happening, I was like, wow, we were doing something we didn't realize we were doing until a different energy came on stage. Now what is that? And then I later on, kind of went to think of, how is hip hop been harmed by that, as far as having this idea of who is the best, who is the greatest, as opposed to a more complimentary way of looking at all the different skill sets of all the different MCs.
Yeah.
But that's a different discussion. Anyway, my name is Hanifah Walidah. I was born, I kind of was talking to some of the folks here earlier before you all came in, but my name is Hanifah Walidah. That's my birth name. Actually, it's Hanifah Walidah Abdul Rahman. But,
Do it one time.
Hanifah Walidah Abdul Rahman. But I couldn't stand my name when I was younger, and it took me a long time to get back to just saying Hanifah Walidah. But born and raised in New York, born in the Bronx, raised up in Yonkers. I remember, I'm over 40, I'm 41, so I remember when there wasn't any hip hop. I remember being in the 4th grade, and my first introduction to hip hop was, most people's commercial introduction to hip hop was Rapper's Delight. And for most of my teenagehood, or actually most of my adulthood, I thought that, my generation was the one that created hip hop and we're the originals. But actually we were the original ones to consume it. Those who were teenagers when I was a kid, they were the ones who actually created hip hop, though they might not have been aware of what they were creating. But we were the first generation to really consume it. So I was a teenager in the 80s, so my heart of heart as far as hip hop music is going to be mostly 80s artists. But in the 90s, an interesting thing happened as I was actually in the mid to late 80s, as I was starting to rhyme, inspired by hearing MC Light on the radio. And as we're moving into the late 80s, coming into the early 90s, and I was, becoming a young adult and coming into my own and have my little crew, what have you, and we're, like every other crew is like, how are we going to get put on, or how are we going to make ourselves known? At that time, hip hop had a shift, a geographical shift, where our entire consciousness was that hip hop was a New York thing in the store. I don't hear anything else, and no one else. I remember when Ice-T first came on the radio, or he traveled over to New York in the '80s to say, "Hey, I'm Ice-T," and I remember him being verbally assaulted on the radio, like, take your behind back to LA, like, it was just horrible. So we had an idea, we were, really pompous and what have you, but NWA had hit the scene and kind of shifted hip hop's, or at least the commercial hip hop, their attention went to the West Coast. And all of a sudden, how I saw that affect New York was, for me, it kind of became a little bit of a ghost town as far as hip hop was concerned. As far as venues, a lot of the hip hop clubs that were primarily a hip hop club, they didn't have a hip hop night, it was a hip hop club. It started, all the clubs started closing down, so it was like, okay, so where do we play, And now to answer your question, what wound up happening is, young people are resourceful. What we did is we went to the Village, where they were doing a lot of kind of traditional prose or beatnik poetry, but here we are, these young hip hop kids just wanting a stage. And so we kind of, no other way to say it, but bum rushed the stage. But what happened, which was beautiful, is that there wound up being kind of this hybrid of this kind of hip hop sensibility as far as performance. We don't hold pieces of paper to say our poetry. We just come at you. We memorize everything. It's a performance. We command the entire stage. And that meshing with that kind of traditional, prose. And essentially what that became was spoken word, But for me, I think I was like 21, 22, at the time, that was a beautiful time for New York, because again, it was a time where people weren't realizing. In other words, for my generation, we were creating something we weren't realizing we were creating because we were in the middle of it. Just like, say, in the 70s, the generation before mine were creating hip hop but weren't really realizing what they were creating. They just were doing what they were doing. But through the spoken word movement in the early 90s, I still identified as an MC. I didn't identify, actually the spoken word wasn't even a term, actually. So I still identified as an MC, and around 93 I got signed and came out with an album called The Head Nodder's Journey to Adidas Schism. When you're young, you make long-winded albums. A Head Nodder's Journey to Adidas Schism. I was on some side, but yeah. Anyway, I didn't receive like commercial success. I received critical success. So I was respected amongst my peers, and that time was interesting. I found myself on stage with people who I admired greatly. I hung out with people who I admired greatly. The industry is a very interesting place, or to be in psychologically. And I'm grateful for it. I was grateful for the privilege to travel, because that initial travel via hip hop or being signed led me to another point in my career when I decided to leave hip hop, or leave the industry rather. Really quick kind of story in my leaving, and this will kind of lead to what we're going to talk about today. In leaving hip hop, in leaving the industry, my label, became another horror story. You've heard it too many times, so I won't repeat it, but another horror story.
Some of them are totally foreign to.
Okay, well, I mean, it's when the industry, health story in the sense of, the music business is what it is. It's a business. You have a product, you see that can make money, you invest money in that product. If the product doesn't meet a certain margin, you start to not invest anymore. But that also mixed with the kind of hoopla of the hype of everyone. I always said that the worst drug, I don't take drugs per se, but the worst drug that anyone ever gave me at that time were ego strokes. And it kind of kept me in a state of where I wasn't able to really focus on what was happening around me, because everyone's saying, you're great, I'm like, great, everything's free, you don't pay to get in any place, and yada, yada, yada. So I'm living this life, which was, wonderful, especially when you're young. It's like, okay, I'm open to everything, great, but there was an inner voice that's like, there's something that I'm not listening to myself as far as my own sense of expression, sexual expression, gender expression. Essentially, I was in the closet. And in hindsight, I realized how that even affected my performance, because I was out there, like I was one of those female MCs that I just came at you. I loved performing, I didn't realize that I was holding back until later in life. But what happened was my label started to de-invest in me. Is that a word, de-invest? Yeah, okay. And I remember one day, their office was on the penthouse floor of that building that's next to Carnegie Hall. And so we went up there, me and my manager, went up there to discuss what's going on. And when the elevator doors open, there's the receptionist desk, or the receptionist area, and they had their thing where they would always import these exotic plants or flowers from wherever the hell they imported them from, and they would just sit on the receptionist desk. You wouldn't even see the receptionist, just be this huge plant, It's like, okay, here's the plant of the week, essentially. And I remember this day, we were so infuriated that we didn't even notice what the plant of the week was. We just went in, said our last words, and kind of left it up to the lawyers. But upon exiting, then we turned to our right and we saw the plant of the week, and it was a humongous cotton bush, still on the stems. I was like, okay.
Let's make
Okay,
that clear
okay.
for some people.
I'm not a dumb woman.
So, for
You know.
people who are forced migrants who were brought to the New World to pick cotton, that can be symbolic, very symbolic.
If not at university,
Because
right?
most of us have never
Message
seen
from God.
real cotton.
When
I went to Mississippi, it was the first time I ever saw real cotton.
Yeah. I had
And I
never
was
seen.
like-
I'm from New York, so I'm like, wow. It's like, and I even picked some. I was like, I've never picked cotton before. I didn't know what it looked like. I was like, wow. But I also thought it was a clear sign, and I was no one's fool. And I said, you know what? I'm not going. I said, if we get out of this contract, I'm not going to escape one plantation to run to another. And so we did get out. My lawyer found some sort of loophole in the contract, and I was able to get out without owing them $315,000. And and yeah, because it's a loan. The investment is not, it's a loan.
Yeah, in case
Yeah.
anybody here doesn't realize, musicians, when they get hired, and the same thing happens with book contracts for academics. You get a little advance or a big advance, and when you first get your money, that's what comes out. So if you make it really big,
All those lunches, all those, oh, you're great, let's buy you wine, or let's whatever. I'm like, all right, great, but I don't know that's coming out of my behind. But anyway, all that being said, just to move forward, so I decided that I needed to step back from the industry, not just because I got burnt, but also I knew there was there was a voice saying, if you're going too deep, there's a point where you're not going to be able to turn back. There's a point where you're going to be faced that you have to kind of brand yourself, if you will, and you have to adhere to that. And I knew I'd been in the industry long enough to know that was coming. So I decided to step away. And I moved to Oakland and did the whole thing. I just stepped away. And during that time, I came out to myself. I, got my bumps and bruises with that. And, I came into my womanhood, I feel, at that point. And also was able to explore, thankfully, all aspects of performance. And I realized that hip hop gave birth to me, and it helped me craft how to work the stage, how to manipulate the audience, how to engage with the audience, how to have an exchange with the audience. But that can be applied to all kinds of performance. So I wound up doing theater. When I started traveling overseas, I started exploring my singing voice, and now I mostly sing as opposed to MC, though I can still MC, but I mostly sing. And I also started traveling. Once I started traveling, forget about it, I got the travel bug, and I'm going on my third passport. Like, I go through it. Like, I love traveling. That's the biggest blessing in my life. If you can find a means to travel, I think that's the greatest gift you can give yourself. Even if it's within the country, but definitely if it's outside of the country, outside of the culture that is that But that traveling was a gift. It gave me a sense of fearlessness. I found my voice in different venues of performance, even in film, what have you. And then just fast forwarding, in 2006, Logo comes on the scene. I'm like, oh, so I actually can have a music video. You know, there's an avenue of trying to find some acceptance in the country that is my home, because I'm known overseas, but not so much at home. So I said, okay, my girlfriend at the time was like, okay, let's do a video. And she was studying to be a cinematographer, ironically at Hunter. And I was like, let's do this. And you can actually go to the video. So this is something that, it was a song called Make a Move. Yeah. And what we did, we basically went into a friend of ours, Brownstone. And let me preface it with this. What I wanted to do and what I understood, and I think it was even kind of touched on a little bit in the article, was to present no, not the trailer. The actual video. The trailer can be because the film came after the music video. I felt like I wanted to invite larger America, if you will, and even gay men, because there is a separation, into the world of women who love women. And so I said, well, if you was a fly on the wall at a Brooklyn Brownstone house party, which there are many Brooklyn Brownstone house parties, what would you see, what would you hear? I didn't want, because women are sexualized in so many different ways, and when you see, lesbians in hip hop videos, it's always sexualized as two, girls with long nails, and, and everyone is just, it's just a mess. And I wanted people to see the well-roundedness of the human beings, and also in particular to see that these are women that you see every day walking down the street, what have you, and have the same sort of conversations embedded within Black culture. That because one of the problems that I had to face is almost having to prove that I'm a Black woman, and I was like, okay, down to people thinking that I speak different, that I think different, that I dance different, that my approximation to white culture is closer to white culture than Black culture, and that's been a big problem. And just understanding Black women who love women, understanding them in their totality. So that was my attempt as a first-time director, also in the video. I'm just going to say that. And so this is what I got all my friends together and said, this is what we're going to do.